Hi guys, welcome back to Cryptid's Den. Some days, I find myself thinking, not just about Bigfoot, but about why these stories linger. Maybe it's not just the creature we're chasing. Maybe it's the part of ourselves that still wants to believe in the unknown, in something just out of reach. If you've ever felt that too, you're not alone. Let me know where you're watching from, and what this mystery stirs in you. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now let's get into it. I remember the sound more than the sight. It wasn't human. Not quite. But it wasn't just animal either. A child's cry, thin and broken, rising through the trees, on a night when no child should have been out there. That was the night I opened my door and saw something impossible standing on the edge of my porch light. 8 feet tall, soaked to the bone, its fur matted with ash and blood, and in its arms, a small, writhing thing clinging to life. A baby, burned, whimpering. It should have terrified me. God knows, for most of my life, I would have bolted that door and called the sheriff. But something in the way it looked at me. Not wild, not threatening. Just desperate, like a mother too broken to beg. What came next wasn't survival or fear. It was instinct. I stepped back and let it in. I didn't know then what that choice would cost me, or what it would give me. That it would tear open the past I'd buried, drag out ghosts I thought I'd forgotten. That it would lead me to the edge of the forest, and far beyond the edges of what I believed. This isn't a story about monsters in the woods. It's a story about the monsters inside us, and the silent ones we've forgotten how to see. And it all began with a scream in the trees. It started with a sound, not thunder, not wind through the pines, not the usual creak of my old cabin moaning under the weight of a cold Montana rain. No, it was a child crying, thin, fragile, distant, like something broken calling from deep inside the woods. I sat up straight in bed, heart knocking hard in my chest. It was 2:17 a.m., according to the clock on the wall, glowing red like a wound. The rain hadn't stopped since sundown. I knew every animal sound in these woods. Foxes, owls, even the occasional bobcat scream. But this was different. It was the sound of grief, tangled in fear, and it was coming from the pines. I grabbed the old Winchester I kept by the door, not because I'm brave, but because I'm old. Old enough to know that sometimes survival comes down to being louder than the thing that wants you dead. I stepped out onto the porch. The rain slapped down on the tin roof and turned the yard into a swamp of wet pine needles. Mist curled around the tree trunks like fingers. The flashlight beam trembled slightly in my hand, but not from the cold. Then I saw it, a silhouette at the edge of the clearing, taller than any man, still as stone, soaked in the downpour. It was holding something in its arms, curled up, small, limp. It didn't move, neither did I. For a long, breathless moment, we just stood there. Two creatures, two mothers, separated by species and soaked to the bone. The wind shifted. My light caught its face. Hair matted and slick with rain. Eyes too large, too human, not glowing, not snarling. Just desperate. Wet strands hung across its jaw, and below that, two enormous arms wrapped around what looked like a child. The thing in its arms was shaking. I tightened my grip on the gun. Every instinct screamed at me to fire. But it didn't growl. It didn't lunge. It just stood there, chest rising and falling fast, eyes locked to mine, pleading. It tilted its head. And then I heard it again. That cry. Only this time, it wasn't just a sound. It was a memory, a sharp, echoing cry from years ago, from another cabin, another night. My daughter, Lena, screaming after pulling boiling water off the stove, her little hands blistered and raw. That high, jagged scream, the kind that burns into you and never leaves. That was the sound I heard now. The world tilted. My hand fell away from the trigger. I didn't remember walking to the door, just that I was suddenly there, opening it wide. The warmth from inside casting a golden pool into the storm. The creature flinched, but I held out my empty hands. "It's okay," I whispered, though I had no idea if it understood. It stepped forward, not like a predator, like something asking permission. The child, or whatever it was, whimpered in its arms. I could see now the skin on its side was raw, burned, and something else, torn, slashed, as if it had been bitten. The blood wasn't red. It was thick, black, like oil that had cooled into ash. I stepped aside. The creature ducked under the frame of the cabin door, water pouring off its fur, shoulders hunched to fit. It moved like it was used to hiding its size, its shape, its grief. The air inside the cabin turned heavy. The wood walls seemed to close in around us. It crouched beside the fire I'd stoked before bed and gently laid the injured one down on the rug. A soft moan came from its throat, low and steady, like a lullaby humming through the ribs. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The scent hit me hard, wet fur, smoke, and something ancient, earthy, and wild. I dropped to my knees beside them, my nurse's hands coming back to life without asking me first. Muscle memory kicked in. I reached for my old red tin first aid kit beneath the bench. Alcohol, gauze, thread gloves. My fingers shook, but not from fear. The little one was shaking, breath ragged. Its skin was thick, but where it had burned, it peeled like bark. Beneath was bruising the color of bruised plums and fire. The mother, because that's what she was, no doubt in my mind, watched every move I made. Her hand never left her child's chest. Her eyes never left mine. I cleaned the wound, whispered comfort. Pretended this was normal. Pretended I didn't want to cry. When I wrapped the last bandage around the child's arm, the creature looked at me and nodded. That's simple. That's small. But it hit me like thunder. I sat back, breath catching. My hand brushed the scar on my wrist, from the day I'd thrown the pot of boiling water trying to stop Lena from hurting herself more. She cried for hours. I'd cried for years. And now, this stranger from the woods had brought her child to me, trusting me. I don't know how long we sat there in silence. The rain softened. The wind sighed through the chimney. And in that strange, broken peace, I realized something had shifted. Something in me. Something in the world. I'd always believed that fear was the only way to survive in the wilderness. But that night I learned otherwise. Sometimes survival isn't about fighting. Sometimes it's about opening the damn door. And as the fire crackled low and the child's breathing settled into something steady, I finally let the tears fall, not just for the creature or her child, but for Lena, for the little girl who never got to cry herself to sleep in safety, and for the old woman who finally understood what it meant to be seen in the dark. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the fire, holding the world together with every breath. Outside, the storm passed, but something else was waking, and I could feel it, deep in the marrow of my bones, that whatever had arrived in these woods hadn't come alone. I didn't touch my coffee the next morning. It sat cold on the table beside a half-sliced orange, untouched since I set it down. I couldn't stop watching the mother and her child curled near the fireplace, limbs draped over each other like a sculpture made of shadow and breath. The little one whimpered softly in its sleep, its chest rising in uneven pulses. Steam drifted off the soaked fur as the fire licked heat across the room, and in the quiet of dawn, something about the air felt wrong. I pulled on my gloves again, My hands were stiff, not from the cold, but from the ache of memory returning through my fingertips. It had been years since I last wrapped a wound. Longer since I touched someone with purpose. I crouched beside the child, this small being cradled in arms that could crush bone, and lifted the edge of the bandage I'd placed over its side. The gauze was soaked through, not with red, with something thicker, darker, a black blood that shimmered like graphite and smelled faintly metallic, like burnt wires or scorched earth. The skin around the burn had cracked open during the night. But that wasn't what made my stomach drop. There were marks buried beneath the injury, deep, ragged, not from fire. Bite marks, sharp, wide set. 2 punctures along the ribs, just above the hip. Something with teeth had gone after it, and not gently. The kind of bite meant to kill, not scare. The mother was watching me. Her body remained still, but her eyes followed every move. She didn't stop me. She didn't growl. That was the strangest part. She let me tend to her baby like I was part of her world. And maybe, in some broken way, I was. I went to the sink, ran warm water, washed my hands 3 times. That's when I heard the creak, a slow, careful weight pressing down on the 3rd floorboard from the front door, the one that always betrayed anyone who thought they could sneak in. I reached for the rifle. "Don't shoot," a voice hissed. I froze. Then I saw him soaked hoodie, 2 long jeans, and that same damn Red Sox cap he never stopped wearing. Jasper. My grandson, 14 years old, too smart for his own good, and stubborn as all hell. "What the hell are you doing here?" I hissed, whispering sharp as a slap. "I heard something last night," he said. "Heard you yelling. Thought somebody broke in." I saw the lights still on. His eyes flicked over my shoulder. I saw the moment he noticed them, the wideness in his pupils, the way his hand curled into a fist and then opened again, like he was trying to convince himself not to run. "What is that?" he whispered. I stepped between him and the fire. Not a what. He didn't listen. Of course he didn't. He sidestepped me and moved closer, slow, almost hypnotized. The mother tensed, but didn't lunge. Just watched. Jasper stared down at the injured child, eyes narrowing. "I've seen those marks before," he muttered. "In the woods." He turned to me, his voice lower now, full of something I hadn't heard from him since his father died. Real fear. "We were camping up near Hollow Ridge. I was with Cade and Reese. There were footprints, burned boot prints, like someone had walked through fire and just kept going." I felt my breath catch. "I thought it was a joke," he continued. "Cade dared us to follow them, but we found this spot near the lake. Something was dead, torn open, like it got ripped apart from the inside out, and there were these symbols carved into the rocks. We ran." He looked back at the little one. I thought it was Bigfoot. But now, those bite marks. "That wasn't from them, was it?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The mother made a sound, a low, rattling breath. Her hands slid across the floor and gently pushed her child's head closer to her side. Protective. Tired. Still watching. Jasper stepped closer, and something incredible happened. She let him. He was shaking. I could see it in his shoulders. But he reached out, just enough to hover his hand above the child's fur. No contact. Just breath. And then the child opened its eyes. They were large, cloudy, but full of light. It didn't cry. It didn't flinch. It looked at him. And for a second, I saw both of them, Jasper and that little being, as mirrors of each other, both caught in some world that had twisted too early, too fast, both carrying a weight far heavier than their age should allow. That night, After I got Jasper settled with hot soup and a million questions left unanswered, he sat with me by the fire and asked me something that cracked me open from the inside. "Did Lena scream like that when she got burned?" I couldn't lie. "Yes," I said. "She did." He didn't ask anything else. Just sat in silence, staring at the flames. I pulled out the photo. The only one I still kept. Lena at 7, gap-toothed smile, bandage still wrapped around her arm. That day she forgave me, said she knew I hadn't meant to hurt her, said she was okay. But she never really was. She carried that pain in her bones, like I carry it in mine. I handed the photo to Jasper. "She was about your age," I whispered, and I never told her how proud I was. Jasper looked down at the picture. He didn't smile, but I saw something shift in his jaw, something tighten, like he understood. Maybe not everything, but enough. And somewhere out in the trees, I thought I heard it again. That distant, almost human cry. But this time, it wasn't alone. Something else was in the woods, watching, waiting. And I had the terrible feeling we'd only just begun to open the wrong kind of door. The first dream came the night after Jasper left. He'd barely spoken as he put his boots on. That photo of Lena still tucked in his back pocket. Mother and her child had vanished into the tree line before dawn, leaving behind a faint trail of ash-colored hair and silence. The cabin was too quiet. No rustling, no shallow breathing near the hearth. No sense of someone watching me with soft, ancient eyes. Just the wind pushing against the old windows like it was trying to get in. I barely closed my eyes when it started. I wasn't in my bed. I wasn't in Montana. I was somewhere else. Older than memory. A wide clearing surrounded by towering stones, slick with moss. The trees looked wrong. Taller, denser. Their bark etched with glowing blue veins pulsing like heartbeats. Firelight flickered, casting shadows of bodies moving in rhythm. Not dancing, not fighting. Something else. A ceremony. Dozens of them. Tall, fur-covered beings. Bigfoot, but not how I knew them. Regal. Peaceful, not hiding. They wore bones braided into their hair and painted their faces with thick streaks of ash. And I was there too. Not as myself. My hands were larger, my breath deeper. I felt the weight of something pressed to my chest, warm and trembling. A child. Mine. I didn't know the language, but I understood it all the same. The way you understand music without lyrics. I was one of them. A mother. And I was afraid. A shadow moved across the stone floor. Tall, silent. No features. Just void. No features. Just void. I screamed, but there was no sound. Just the fire dimming. The child was ripped from my arms. I chased after it through trees that twisted and pulled away like they didn't want to help. Then, nothing. Blackness and the cold. I woke up gasping, soaked in sweat. The bedsheets tangled around my legs like vines. It was still dark outside, but not quiet. Something was humming, not a sound I could trace. More like a vibration in the walls, in my bones, a pressure behind my eyes. The dreams didn't stop after that. They grew clearer, more detailed. Night after night they unfolded like chapters in a book I'd forgotten I'd written. I saw villages built into cliffsides, ladders woven from vines, Bigfoot women carrying baskets of herbs, men carving symbols into cave walls, children playing near rivers that glowed faintly under moonlight. I saw humans too, not separate, together, sharing meals, sitting by fire, a single world, unified by fear of something deeper in the dark. One morning, just as the frost on the windows began to melt into streaks, I grabbed the old sketchbook I kept under the stairs. My fingers moved like they were remembering something before I did. I drew the symbol I kept seeing in the dream. A circle split down the center, with jagged lines bursting from the top like lightning bolts. I didn't know what it meant. Only that it terrified me. Later that week, Jasper came back. He hadn't warned me. Just showed up holding 2 bags of trail mix and that stupid smirk that never quite reached his eyes anymore. "You sleep okay?" he asked, like it was a joke. I didn't answer. He sat at the table, pulled a folded paper from his jacket, unfolded it slow. "I brought something," he said. It was a rubbing, crude, smudged with dirt. But the shape was unmistakable. My hand stopped mid-air. It was the same symbol. Jasper tapped it. We found it carved inside a cave near Lake Drennan. Me, Cade, Reese. Years ago. We thought it was nothing. But after seeing that kid, and the way they looked at us, I started thinking. Maybe it's not just drawings. I slid my sketchbook across the table. His face paled. "You dreamed this?" he asked. "No," I whispered. I remembered it. He didn't speak for a long time. We drove out that afternoon. I hadn't been to that part of the forest in over a decade. The trees were thicker now, wilder, like they'd grown closer to keep something buried. The cave sat low, its mouth hidden by underbrush and a sagging pine trunk. Jasper led me inside. Our flashlights swept across walls slick with damp and time. And then we saw them. Dozens of markings. Some faded, others still sharp. Stories told in pictures, of creatures, of humans, of fire and blood. And in the center, that same cursed symbol, painted larger than all the rest. I reached out and touched the stone. The moment my fingers brushed it, something jolted through me, like ice water down my spine. A vision flashed behind my eyes, a firestorm, screams. The same shadowed figure I'd seen before, hollow, eyeless, dragging something through snow, and then a voice, not spoken, not heard, just felt. "You forgot us." I stumbled back, breathing like my lungs had cracked. Jasper caught me before I hit the ground. "I saw them," I whispered. "I was there." He didn't ask me to explain. Just sat beside me, the beam of his flashlight trembling slightly as he stared at the carvings. We left as the sun dipped low, the trees around us silent, too silent. That night, the dreams returned with a new face. The child. Not Lena. Not entirely. But close. Her voice. Her cries. Her cries. Her cries. Her arms reaching for something just out of frame. Calling for me. Not in words. In something deeper. Raw. "Mama." I jolted upright, chest heaving, face wet. The fire had burned low, embers glowing like distant stars. I sat there for a long time, holding that word inside me like a wound, and I knew, deep in the marrow of who I was, that I hadn't been dreaming at all. Something was bleeding through. Memory, grief. A story long buried beneath centuries of silence. And now, it was clawing its way back to the surface. It started with smoke. Thin at first. Just a faint gray whisper curling above the pine line. But in a place like Stillwater Ridge, you learn real fast that smoke never means just one thing. My gut tightened before I even reached the window. When I did, it confirmed what I already knew. Something was burning. And it wasn't from a fireplace. I stepped onto the porch and smelled it, sharp, chemical. Not the soft, earthy smoke of fallen leaves or dead wood. This was accelerant-fed, engineered. Somebody had lit a fire where no fire was supposed to be. By the time I reached the edge of the tree line with my boots sinking into damp moss, I could already hear the sirens. Volunteer units from town. A few trucks rolling up the ridge. The smoke had thickened now, bleeding orange through the treetops, and the sky had started to turn that strange, bruised yellow that always comes before trouble. I drove down toward the clearing, and there he was, Sheriff Huxley, leaning against his truck, chewing the inside of his cheek like it owed him money. He saw me coming and didn't flinch. That man had eyes like a coin, flat, old and cold. They say it started up near Burnt Hollow, he said without turning. No one's supposed to be camping up there. I know, I replied, squinting toward the tree line. That's protected land. He nodded slowly, then held out something wrapped in plastic. What's this? I asked. Pulled it from the edge of the fire. Hair. Not deer. Not bear. Too long. Too human. My stomach dropped. Inside the bag, the hair shimmered faintly silver brown in the light. And that's not all, he added, jerking his chin toward a muddy patch just past the burn line. Found tracks. Big ones. I followed him down the slope. They were massive, at least 16 inches, deep set in the ash like the ground had recoiled beneath them. Whatever had made them had been running. Fast. Heavy. Fleeing something. And that's when I knew. Mirth and her child had come this way. They were running, not just from fire. They were running, not just from fire, from something else. Back at the cabin, I waited for Jasper, pacing the floor, wiping the same damn coffee cup again and again until the porcelain felt warm from my hands alone. When he finally showed, I didn't even let him take his coat off. Where were you last night? He hesitated. Don't lie to me, Jasper. He looked down at his shoes, then up at me, and I knew before he spoke. We went out, he said. Me and Kate, just to check out the spot again. He wanted to film it for some dumb YouTube crap. We didn't mean to start a fire. I felt heat rise in my chest. But it wasn't rage. It was fear. What did you see? I asked, his face drained of color. It wasn't them, he whispered. What chased us? It wasn't Bigfoot. I stepped closer. Tell me. It was tall, he said, but thin, like stretched out skin. No fur, just dark. And the worst part, it didn't have eyes. His voice cracked. I shined the flashlight right on its face. Nothing. Just pits. Like someone had carved them out. A cold shot ran through me, bone deep. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I tried to run, he said. But Cade, he tripped. I thought it got him. But then it turned. It looked at me. Oh, it didn't. I don't know. I just know it didn't follow. He pulled something from his pocket. A charred, warped boot. Half-melted rubber. Burnt into the heel was that same symbol from the dream. The circle, the jagged lightning. I found this near the fire pit, he whispered. It wasn't just us. Someone else was there. I wanted to scream. Shake him. Tell him how stupid it was to go back. But I couldn't. Because I remembered something worse. I remembered Lena's voice, that same scream Jasper had described. Thin, wild, pain curled into sound. I turned away, pressing a hand to my chest. He stepped forward. I didn't mean to screw it up, he said. I just wanted to help, but it was already too late. The moment the smoke hit the air, they would come looking, not to rescue, not to understand, but to destroy. To burn everything that didn't fit their version of truth. That night, I sat by the fireplace alone. I thought of Mirth, of her eyes, soft and strong, of the way she handed me her child like she had no other hope left in her. And I realized something unbearable. She had trusted me more than I'd ever trusted myself, because we couldn't stop playing with fire. And something was already burning far deeper than the trees. The air was different that morning. Still. Cold. Not the usual kind of still, but something that pressed down on your shoulders, made your breath feel borrowed. Even the birds had gone quiet. That silence, I've learned, is nature's oldest warning. Something watches you back. Gabriel Roque showed up just before dawn, his Jeep coughing down the gravel road like it didn't want to come any closer than it had to. I was already outside. I'd been awake most of the night, reading the same passage in my journal again and again, the one where I sketched that strange circle split with jagged bolts. I didn't even remember drawing it. It looked older than the paper. He stepped out, Eyes tired, beard a little grayer than the last time. Said he'd been doing his own digging. Said there was a place that matched the carvings we saw near the lake. A place so deep in the backcountry that folks stopped talking about it before I was even born. Solstice Cavern. No one had entered in 50 years, not because of laws, because of fear. A long-standing pact of silence passed down like a warning stitched into bone. But he'd found it. And now he needed me to come see it. Jasper insisted on coming too. I didn't argue. We hiked for 6 hours. The woods changed the deeper we went. Trees growing at strange angles, bark torn in patches, moss too thick to be natural. At one point, we passed a deer carcass stripped of flesh, left clean as glass. Not by hunger, by ritual. The mouth of the cave was buried beneath twisted roots and shale. Gabriel moved them aside with quiet reverence, as if the stones themselves were listening. Inside, the air was thick. Not just stale, charged, like static clinging to the inside of your skin. Our flashlights barely pierced the dark. The walls absorbed the light, swallowed it whole. Then the fire flickered to life. Gabriel had brought a lantern with real flame, said he didn't trust batteries in places like this. And when he lifted it toward the nearest wall, the stones shimmered. Colors shifted. Lines began to move. It wasn't my eyes playing tricks. The drawings breathed. They came to life in the firelight. Figures danced across the wall, not fast, slow, mournful, great shapes built from ash and fur. They stood beside humans, hands joined, circles carved into the earth around them. Peace, ritual, blood shared in balance. Then the scene changed. A shadow slithered through the frame. Tall, narrow, no eyes. It spread over the stone like a sickness. The circle broke. The figures scattered. Some fell. Some ran. Some disappeared into cracks in the earth. And above it all, that symbol. The one from my dreams. The one that made my teeth ache just looking at it. I felt pulled. Not just by the art, but by something deeper, like the walls remembered me, like they were waiting. Gabriel noticed, asked if I was all right, but I didn't answer. My hand moved without permission, reaching toward the stone, fingertips hovering just above the ancient linework. The moment my skin brushed the surface, I wasn't there anymore. I saw her. Lena, 10 years old, hair tied back in a crooked ponytail, laughing, then crying, running through the snow, slipping. Darkness rose behind her like smoke. Something grabbed her. Tall, eyeless, teeth like broken glass. But then, a roar. Something massive crashed through the tree line. Fur bristling, jaw wide in defiance. It didn't hesitate. It fought. Lena was broken, not breathing. And then I saw her body cradled in thick, trembling arms. Not human, but not monster either. Mirth. Her face streaked with blood and ash. She dug a shallow grave with her own hands, sang something low and guttural over the body. Buried Lena with care, with love. I collapsed. The cave spun around me. My knees hit stone, hard. Gabriel shouted, tried to catch me. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Jasper knelt beside me, hand on my shoulder. He asked what I saw. I couldn't tell him. Not all of it. Only that she didn't die alone. And that she hadn't been left behind. I stayed on the ground for a long time, my cheek against the earth, listening. The rock was warm, like a heart beating beneath it. When I finally stood, I whispered the words I should have said a decade ago. Thank you. The walls didn't answer. But something shifted. Not outside. Inside me, a knot loosened. A scream I'd carried in my chest for 10 years finally let go. I looked up and met Gabriel's eyes. We have to protect them, I said. Whatever's coming, it's not just hunting them. It's erasing them. He nodded. No questions, just understanding. We left the cave in silence. But I didn't feel alone. Not anymore. Something had changed. The lines between past and present, between human and not, between grief and grace. And I could feel it, rising like a slow tide through the forest. Whatever was buried was waking. He thought he was saving me. That was the part I couldn't shake. Even after everything fell apart. Even after the flashlights blinded us, and the yelling started, and they dragged Gabriel by the collar like some criminal. Even after they zip-tied my wrists behind my back and shoved me against cold stone, my knees scraping the cave floor, Jasper believed he was doing the right thing. He told them. He told Sheriff Huxley, and once the words left his mouth, there was no calling them back. He thought I was in danger. That Gabriel was leading me into some cult or madness or trap. That the creatures we'd been protecting weren't what I thought they were. And the second he told the sheriff, the law came knocking with boots and dogs and a camera crew. I remember the headlights bleeding through the trees first, cutting through the fog like white knives. The sound of tires crunching gravel, the radio static, then the sharp commands. They came fast, not cautious, not curious, armed. The entrance to Solstice Cavern glowed with floodlights, faces masked, guns raised. The dogs barked wild, straining against their leads. I tried to scream, tried to warn them, but the tape came next, slapped across my mouth so fast I tasted blood. Gabriel fought back. Didn't last long. They cracked his head against the stone and dropped him like a sack of meat. I saw red on the floor and something in me ripped loose. The echoes carried deep into the cave. And they heard it. Mirth stepped into the light, her child behind her trembling. She didn't roar. She didn't attack. She shielded her child with her body and stared the sheriff down like a mother ready to die. Huxley raised his weapon without flinching. The other officers followed. The air changed. It got heavy, electric. My ears rang. My stomach turned. Jasper stepped forward, his face pale. "Wait," he stammered. Huxley didn't lower the gun. He kept his eyes on Mirth and said something I'll never forget, not because of the words themselves, but because of the way his voice shook when he said them. "I lost my brother to the Holokin. And I'll be damned if I let any of these things breed another one." That's when I realized. He knew. He knew exactly what lived out there, what hunted in the shadows. He wasn't protecting the town. He was cleansing it, erasing anything that reminded him of what he'd lost. His brother, taken, vanished, like Lena. But instead of finding truth, he found rage, and turned it into war. I saw the moment Jasper realized it too. It hit him like a punch to the gut. He looked at me, then at Mirth, then back to Huxley, and for the first time in years, he stepped between me and someone else's gun. "She already lost a child," he shouted, his voice cracking. "You want to take another one from her?" The dogs went still. So did the air, and in that split second of silence, I made a choice. I twisted my wrists until the plastic ties dug into my skin, yanked my body sideways, and slammed my shoulder into the rocky wall hard enough to dislocate something. The mountains shot bend a shoulder like lightning. The tape ripped free with my scream. "I won't let your child die from my silence." It came out broken. Half breath, half sob. But it was enough. Mirth's eyes locked onto mine, and she moved. Not fast, not violent. She scooped her child into her arms, leapt sideways into the deeper dark of the cave, and vanished behind a wall of stone before the bullets started flying. Screams followed. Not from them, from the dogs. They turned. They were howling. Ears pinned back, bodies low, refusing to advance. One even broke its leash and bolted. Huxley screamed orders. No one moved, because something else had entered the cave. It wasn't Mirth. It wasn't any of us. It was colder, older. The lights flickered. The ground trembled. And then silence again. Not peace. The kind of silence that comes just before the earth splits open and swallows you whole. The men backed out. One dropped his flashlight. Another tripped. No one spoke as we fled. They left Gabriel bleeding. Left the cameras behind. Left me, finally free from my bindings, crawling across the stone to where he lay. He blinked up at me through blood. "Did they get her?" he whispered. I shook my head. No. His lips curved, just a little. And then the tremor hit. Dirt rained from the ceiling. I grabbed him by the arm, dragged him through the narrowest passage with Jasper helping on the other side. We didn't look back, didn't breathe, until daylight found us again. Outside, the trucks were gone, the dogs too. Just the scent of smoke and broken pine, and the memory of a choice made too late. I didn't speak to Jasper for a long while. Not because I hated him. Because I knew the guilt would settle deeper than any scolding I could offer, and part of me understood. He thought he was saving me. But in the end, we both nearly got everyone killed. And something else didn't leave that cave. It stayed, waiting, watching, and I could feel its eyes in every shadow now. The first thunderclap split the sky right after nightfall. It didn't just echo. It rattled the ground, rolled through the trees like something ancient and alive. I remember tightening the straps on my pack with trembling hands, staring at the trail ahead, thinking we were already too late. Behind me, Jasper was double-checking the bandage wrapped around Gabriel's shoulder. He'd been walking slower all day, favoring his left side, jaw clenched in pain but refusing to turn back. We didn't have time for pain anymore, only movement. Mirth had been waiting for us by the northern tree line, barely visible in the gathering dark. The child nestled into her chest was no longer just a wounded creature. Its breathing was stronger, its gaze was sharper, and somehow, in that storm-lit gloom, it looked older than before. Not in years, but in understanding. Like it knew what was coming. We moved fast. The old logging trail was choked with fallen branches and slick mud, but Mirth guided us like she'd walked it 1,000 times. She didn't speak. Didn't look back. Just kept her head low, child in arms, feet pounding against wet ground with a rhythm that made my lungs ache to follow. The storm crashed in above us. Lightning licked the ridgeline in jagged white cracks. Rain came in sideways, stinging our faces, soaking through every layer of cloth like the sky had opened its throat. Behind us, gunfire. 2 shots far off, but not far enough. I'd followed. I don't know how they tracked us through that mess, but they had. I saw flashlights through the trees like floating eyes, voices barking over radios, and that sound again, deep, heavy, unnatural. Not from any man. Something else hunted with them. Mirth stopped only once, to listen. Then she cut left, off the trail, into the thickest part of the forest. Roots rose like ribs from the earth. Fog curled low. The air smelled like wet ash and fear. We moved as one, breathless, silent. Jasper was behind me, hands shaking but eyes hard now. He wasn't the boy who'd called the sheriff anymore. That version of him had died somewhere in Solstice Cavern, buried under guilt and blood. And just when I thought we might make it, a branch snapped to our right. The trees exploded in light. Huxley stepped out of the dark with his rifle raised, soaked to the skin, face twisted in something past rage. Behind him, 2 officers flanked with dogs, their mouths muzzled but snarling all the same. "Get away from it!" he screamed. Nobody moved. I said, "Drop the damn thing." Mirth didn't flinch. She didn't show fear, only sorrow. Then Jasper did something I never expected. He stepped forward, arms wide, put himself between Huxley's gun and Mirth. He was soaked, trembling, breath coming in gasps. But his voice didn't shake. "She already lost a child," he shouted. "Now, you want to take hers too?" I saw Huxley's jaw twitch, saw his finger tighten. The dogs fell silent. The wind dropped. Then something shifted. The child squirmed in Murph's arms, slid down gently to the ground, knees bending, small feet steadying in the mud. It looked at me, then at Jasper. And it moved, a blur of motion. It lunged, not toward Huxley, but back toward me, tackled me to the ground. And in that exact heartbeat, a shot cracked through the trees. It missed where I'd been standing, hit the tree behind us. Splintered bark exploded across my shoulder. I heard the child's breath right by my ear. Then it was gone, back into the fog, back into Murph's arms. She didn't wait. She ran. So fast the rain couldn't keep up, vanished into the dark like smoke through a broken window. Jasper was yelling. Gabriel had pulled out his flare, firing it into the sky like a signal for something bigger than us. The forest lit up red. The men fell back. Too many shadows moving now. Too many shapes between the trees. Not all of them ours. The ground shook once, just enough to make my knees give out. I looked up. Saw Murph at the edge of the clearing. She turned, only once. Her eyes met mine through the storm. Then she was gone. For good. We didn't chase her. Couldn't. The forest swallowed her whole. We climbed the ridge in silence. The storm began to ease, and there it was. A flat stone nestled beneath a twisted cedar, just past the last trail marker. I knew it before I even saw the words. The one Lena carved 10 years ago. He was here, still scratched deep into the surface, still raw, still mine. But now, beside it, fresh lines, rougher, cruder, but clear. And so were we. I knelt beside it, ran my fingers over the grooves, felt warmth in the stone despite the cold. Jasper stood behind me, quiet. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Something in the wind whispered for me. Something in the trees held us like breath. And I knew then, even if we never saw them again, they remembered. It's been 31 days since the storm, since the trail. Since the flare lit up the forest like a red warning flare in my own heart. The world didn't end. The town didn't collapse. No headlines. No search parties. No news vans camped outside my porch asking about monsters. Just silence. Stillwater Ridge went back to pretending it didn't know what it had seen. And maybe that's the strangest thing of all. How quick people are to forget what doesn't fit inside their version of reality. But I remember. I still wake up before the sun, kettle whistling before the birds even begin. I drink my tea facing the woods, watching the wind move through the pines like fingers across old piano keys. Every morning I think the same thing. How strange it is to feel full and hollow at the same time. Jasper comes by most afternoons. He doesn't ask many questions anymore. Just helps stack firewood or fixes the screen door that never quite shuts right. We don't talk much about what happened. Some things don't need to be spoken to be shared. But there's a weight in him now. Something settled. Not gone, but balanced. I think he's starting to understand what it means to carry pain without letting it define you. Last week, we started cleaning out the north wing of the cabin, that old, musty room with the cracked skylight and the bookshelves full of dust and spider webs. We've turned it into a study. A place for maps, notes, specimens, sketches. We bought a whiteboard and labeled it Field Center, like we were running something official. Like the truth needs a desk and a drawer to survive. He wants to open it to ecology grad students. Give them somewhere to study the ridge properly. Document wildlife. Map the trails that don't show up on modern charts. But mostly, I think he wants to make sure the story doesn't die in whispers. Gabriel's recovering. His vision still flickers on the left side when the light changes too fast. But he's writing again. Pages and pages of it. His manuscript has a working title now. The Hollow Pacti. He reads me passages sometimes. And I sit quietly, letting the words thread into the spaces silence used to fill. He says the book isn't about monsters. It's about mothers. I think he's right. This morning, the fog came low and heavy, and for a moment it felt like the ridge had disappeared completely. Just gray and trees and breath. I opened the front door, out of habit, same way I always do. And there it was, something left on the top step. A flower. Purple. Small, rare. I hadn't seen that color since I was a little girl. Grew deep in the gulches. Only bloomed after a full moon and a hard frost. My grandmother used to say they were spirit markers. Signs that someone was watching from the in-between. Beside it, a small crocheted hook, red and blue thread, worn and knotted in a way that only one pair of hands could have made. My daughter's. She'd made dozens of them before she died. Left them on doorknobs, slipped them into coat pockets, quiet acts of love she never got to grow into. My breath caught so hard I forgot how to let it go. I picked them up slowly, the wood of the step creaking beneath me, and held them close like they might vanish if I blinked too fast. And then I heard it. Not words, just wind through the trees, but in it, something softer. A note. A hush. A thank you. Not loud, not even out loud, but deep, like it came from beneath the roots. I sat on the porch, tea growing cold beside me, and let the sun cut through the last of the fog. The forest looked golden again, alive, changed, and as I leaned back in my chair, eyes closed, breeze brushing across my cheek like fingers that remembered. I didn't ask for more. Not because I didn't want it, but because I finally understood what had been given. They remembered, and that was enough. Sometimes, the most powerful stories aren't the ones shouted from rooftops. They're the quiet ones whispered in the dark. They live in the cracks between what we believe and what we fear. In the space where grief meets grace. They're not always clean or easy. Often, they're messy, uncertain, and stitched together by people trying to survive their own hearts. But that's what makes them matter, because when we stop running from the unknown, when we choose to look closer instead of turning away, we find that what we thought were monsters might have simply been misunderstood. That the wild things we feared may have once held their own families close. That pain, even when buried deep beneath silence and soil, finds its way to light when someone dares to remember it with kindness. There is something unshakable about compassion, the way it cuts through fear like morning light through fog. It doesn't need permission. It just shows up, again and again, until the world softens enough to let it in. And in that quiet space, something beautiful happens. We begin to see each other not as enemies, but as echoes. Not as strangers, but as stories still being written. This was never a tale about good versus evil. It was about what we choose to carry forward, and what we finally choose to lay down. It was about listening when the world falls quiet, about opening doors instead of locking them, and above all, about remembering. Thank you for sharing this journey. If it moved you, if something in these quiet corners found a place in your own story, leave us a comment. We'd love to hear how it made you feel. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe to support more stories that speak not just to the eyes, but to the heart. Because some truths aren't meant to be forgotten. They're meant to be felt together.